Hi, everybody. This is Michael Macintosh. Um, I wanted to welcome you to my new live streams, videos. Uh, Starting today, I will be addressing the issue of what will make America the greatest again, and how are we, as Americans, US citizens, going to do that. This is going to be my goal as President of the United States starting in 2024. Hopefully, the American people will be smart enough to put me in office and allow me the ability to help get you to the job. Because I'm not going to do it for you. Nobody else is going to do it for you or for us. We have to do it ourselves. That's always been the way. That's the way that it will be. And that's how reality works, my friends. It's not going to be the greatest again unless we make it so. So, over the course of these Make America the Greatest Again videos, I'm going to attempt to address everything that is wrong with our country and ask you for solutions and offer what solutions I've thought of. I'm sure there are many others that can be thought of and discussed, and that we collectively can come together and work on starting in 2024, because what I think has to be done before then is for the entirety of the administration in Washington, D.C. that currently exists has to be cleaned out. And everybody who has been working in our government for either a long time or even currently, a short time even, has to go. We need to replace our entire government. Um, I know we want to be loyal to certain individuals who are who we may feel are in there representing us and doing the best that they can, but I'm going to illustrate over the next while that we basically need to replace everybody from the top down. Uh, we we just need to replace our entire government. Everybody in it has to be fired, voted out, um, removed from office if necessary, impeached if necessary, um, and that's how we're going to start making America the greatest again and making it into the country that it was supposed to be, that it is supposed to be, but that it currently is not and has not been. If we are completely and truly honest to ourselves and to the world, we can admit that we are not the greatest at everything, and probably not the greatest at a lot of things anymore. Um, how are we going to change this? Well, I would like all of you to please start thinking about that, and let's start formulating solutions and plans and goals to literally take over our government by 2024 and start initiating things that will make America the greatest in everything. We can do it. We've done it before. We used to be the greatest at everything. I remember. I'm old enough to remember. I was a kid, but we were. We have to realize what happened along the way, how things went wrong, figure out ways to never make those mistakes again, and prevent those mistakes from ever happening again. And then figure out ways which we can begin to start making things the best that they possibly can be. So let's see, what do you guys have to say in here? I'm gonna read some of your comments so far. Hi there, Lucas. You switched to the Republican Party. Well, that is good and bad, frankly. I think um, that there really isn't any point in voting for a Republican, though, if that person is not a real Republican. And if you really think about it, if you really step back and examine the bigger picture of US history, we haven't had a Republican president. I mean, we've had George Bush, who was not a Republican. He ran as a Republican and was elected by Republicans who either were A, too lazy to run for the office themselves and decided to vote for him, or B, didn't know what they were voting for and got tricked into voting for Bush, which I think is partially what, honestly, Trump is doing. I don't have necessarily a huge problem with things that Donald Trump is doing, but I don't consider him to be a true Republican. So I think he's very liberal, is necessarily the best way to be when it comes to not just with their words, but excuse me. I think a real Republican will be a lot tougher, not just with their words, but with their actions. And I don't think his current vice president is really back to Republican or yeah, in the true sense of the word, you could argue that he was the last Republican president, perhaps. He was extremely focused on domestic issues, getting our own house in order, and working for and motivating the people and creating opportunities for the people to be actively participant in society on every level. I don't see that with anybody else since then. Uh, so in that way, George H.W. Bush was probably the last real Republican president, and he was not a perfect man by any stretch of the imagination, but he definitely did a lot of good for the country. And when he was vice president, with Ronald Reagan. He obviously had a very major hand in the policies of the Reagan administration. Um, and of course, Reagan himself was somewhat of a Republican, but he had been a Democrat for a long time. Excuse me. So many of the approaches and ideas that Reagan had were definitely very influenced by his background as a Democrat. So yeah, I don't know. I still would argue that on on many levels, George H.W. Bush was the last Republican president, and before that, maybe Richard Nixon. Nixon was indeed a brilliant man who made a lot of things happen that, especially pertaining to finance and the banking system, that he was really targeted for afterwards, and that's why he had to resign because he likely would have been impeached. So, let's see. Let me go back up a little bit. But I think if we really want to know what a Republican is, we definitely should be looking at Abraham Lincoln and even presidents before Lincoln who paved the way for what we know today as the Republican Party. But the party itself has been infiltrated by people who aren't really Republicans, obviously. And there are many people who are in practice Republican oriented, but are in the Democratic Party, such as I believe Barack Obama was very Republican oriented in many ways and very conservative, actually, for a Democrat. But anyway, so let's see. But I appreciate your vote in 2024 for sure. Um, but again, think about what I'm saying. If it's not an actual Republican in office, or if it's not an actual Republican that gets nominated in 2024, I would seriously think about who you vote for because we don't want to trick ourselves into thinking that somebody is the right person just because they have the right label on them. We want to look at the policies. We want to look at whether they're for real. We want to look at if they're competent and capable of doing what they say they're going to do or they want to do, and if they're really going to follow through on their word. And I think that I am all of those things, frankly. What you see is what you get, folks. That's it. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. It's that simple. Hello there, Shane. How are you today? Thanks for visiting. Uh, yeah, even on state levels, Lucas, there are issues with many of our state governments, and we need to address those as well. So, yeah, that's a good point. We can definitely also not just focus on federal level issues, but we can focus on state level issues and even our county, our city, or town, whichever. Um, at all levels, our government just really needs a gigantic cleansing, frankly. And I think we need to get ready for that and figure out ways to make that happen. I feel it's the baby boomer generation's fault they voted themselves in since 1990. Well, in part, yes. In part, no. I think you're right. I think it's very simple it's very easy to simplify it in those kind of terms. But you know, I think it comes down to a lot of different issues, but people may have done the best that they could with what they had to work with in a lot of instances. So it's very easy to blame an entire generation, but I don't think that's necessarily productive. Hi there, Melissa. How are you today? Thanks for coming in. Um, yeah, Abraham Lincoln was, well, he was really the first Republican president, wasn't he? But if you look at before him, there were presidents going all the way back to Washington who were effectively Republicans. But things went crazy somewhere along the line, in my opinion. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I've been sick too. It's not been good, but I'm doing a whole lot better today, and feeling good. Feeling good overall. Just been resting a lot, drinking a lot of water, beer, wine, and taking some really good medication. So, taking good care of myself, and my wife is being really good to me, and my kids are uh, fantastic. So, I can't complain about them. They've all been very helpful. Uh, just being really careful because, especially with that coronavirus thing that's been going around lately, there have been instances of it discovered in uh, even in my home state in Massachusetts. So it's kind of I really don't want to take any risks. I hope I didn't catch that or something. I haven't gone to a doctor to find out if that's what it was, but I think I'd probably know if it was. But I'm pretty sure it's just a symptom of other things that have been going on with me. Actually, I've been starting to get really into sort of what would you call it, regression therapy, deep exploration of my own mind. And every time I really try to do that to uncover things that are buried in my memory, I do it very, if I do it extensively, I start to get sick for some reason, physically sick. Um, so I think it might just have to do with me starting to remember things more from my past and especially my early childhood, which, you know, had a, I remember it fondly, but it probably had a lot of problems if I'm completely honest. A lot of things were likely not very normal, but you know, memory is a funny thing. When you start to uncover memory that you may have suppressed or has been repressed, you can actually become very ill. So I think that might be what is happening. So, but I don't know. But I'm doing okay now. So thank you for your kind words there. I appreciate them. Hello there, Nathan. Let's see. Aftermath of the Trump impeachment led to the rumor of second American Civil War. If Trump won 2020, will it be happening in the future? Well, here's my opinion on the second American Civil War. I think It's kind of already happened. And I think it's ending with the Trump administration. But because of the effects of uh, intervention, time travel, that it's been a lot of the really bad things that happened or would have happened during during the Second American Civil War, which I believe started during the George Bush administration, because the country became extremely divided at that point, and we haven't really gotten it together since then. Let's be honest, we've been extremely divided since 9/11, and I think if time travel did not exist, the effects of the Second American Civil War would have been substantially worse. I believe that probably a time traveler that Michael Phillips has spoken of, named John Titor, had a great influence on the outcome of the Second American Civil War. I think that in the future we may not even refer to this period as the Second American Civil War because time travel has changed it. But those of us who know what really was going on behind the scenes um, will still likely refer to it as such, and I personally will refer to it as such. I believe that we are still effectively in the Second American Civil War, and if time travel had not impacted that and impacted the prevention of World War III, which it also has, we it would be more obvious that we have been living in a second civil war, and it would be more obvious that World War III started. It would have likely been happening already, perhaps. I'm not sure what month in the alternate timeline that wasn't influenced by time travel that World War III was supposed to start, but I think we would know by now if it were really going to happen. So I'm not going to speak too soon. I don't think we're necessarily 100% in the clear when it comes to that, but I think we're mostly in the clear, probably 98% because of the abundance of communication and information about these things that have been going on, and especially the time travelers coming back. So I think what you're going to see is in the future, you're going to see a more united America. I think you're going to see a more united world. And a lot of this divisive political rhetoric that goes on in the United States, even now, still to some extent, will be over. And you look back on this time and say, wow, that was a really strange time period. There was something going on, but we don't quite know what necessarily. I think you'll realize that it would have been more obvious that there was a Second American Civil War um, had time travel not intervened. And it would have been more obvious that World War III was about to happen if time travel had not intervened. So, again, time travel. We're getting onto that subject, I guess. All right. So we'll talk about more about that later. I suppose it's a very lengthy, detailed subject that we can learn more about. But I would, if you get the opportunity to research the writings of John Titor, Johntitor. He's a man who I've actually spoken with myself, and compare it with what Michael Phillips has been saying, and look at the timeline, the historic record of the last 25 years or more, even 30 years perhaps, you will see that it's just been a very weird time in our history, and a lot has gone on that obviously could have been much worse had there not been some sort of intervention. So, Nathan, thank you for saying that you'll vote for me. I appreciate that. Prophecy. I don't know which prophecies you're referring to. The only prophecies that I really trust are the ones that are in the Bible, frankly. But if I were you, I would look into those. They're really fascinating. Hi there, Eric. How have you been? Just getting off your day job. Back to the campaign, the greatest, right, as usual. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make it the greatest that it possibly can be. And hopefully the greatest at a lot of things. Again, like it used to be when you and I were kids. I know about how old you are, so you probably remember better times when you were younger. I know I do, and I think a lot of people do, frankly. So we're gonna make it the greatest again. Okay. If you guys haven't seen my website, it was updated today with some new artwork that reflects the theme of this chat. So I think that is definitely going to be a major focus of my campaign is making America the greatest. And thanks to Donald Trump, I guess, for letting me rip off his his slogan. But I give credit where it's due, I guess, right? Whoever in the Trump administration or the Trump camp, whoever came up with the "Make America Great" thing, well, um, why settle there? I say, why not make it the greatest? So here we go, right? Hi there, Melissa. So now you call radio stations and talk to the news. Need to start this campaign. Yeah, I'm getting. I've been getting a little bit of my online presence and social media presence ready for that today, and that's been kind of the focus of my day, really. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna start doing that probably early next week since it's almost Friday already. Maybe even a little bit this weekend. I'm going to be on the phone to independent radio stations everywhere, all across America, every state. I call every last one of them and just bug them all. Um, get them to put me on the air if they can, and we can talk more about what we've been talking about. But I'm especially going to focus on making America the greatest because that's really what we're trying to do, is it not? Yeah, it is. You hear Melissa. Melissa seems like she's a good listener. Like she does hear Eric. So yeah, it's true. We are never in the clear. It's never 100%, but we must continue to make sure we are in the clear. You're right. It has to. It is always work in progress. I agree with you. Yeah, that's true. It is possible, I suppose, just to postpone things, but hopefully we can postpone them infinitely. That's ultimately the goal, right? But yeah, you're right. I agree. Some things are just probably unavoidable, ultimately. Hi there, Jay. Will for real? What's the good news? The good news of the good news of. I like to think of the good news as the good news of God's kingdom, but like Jesus said in Matthew 24, this good news of the kingdom will be preached in all the inhabited earth. But that's the good news I'm really focused on personally. And you guys, that's what I believe is really the only solution to all of our problems. I don't believe that you know the United States government is going to solve all our problems. I don't believe that any human government is going to solve all of our problems, but we can sure try to mitigate certain things and um, improve the situation until things ultimately are fixed by God's kingdom. Can we not? Lucas says, Michael, can you come watch my YouTube live stream sometime? I was thinking about doing one on etymology, the origin of words. I sure will. Just send me a link. Let me know when you're on, and I'll come and check it out sometime. Sure. I'm definitely interested in etymology as well, actually, as a student of many languages and a student of the Bible, because, as you know, the Bible was not written in modern English and it requires a lot of research to really get the true meaning of what's being said in there sometimes. So I do that a lot myself. Um, I'm a Greek and Hebrew enthusiast, especially. But when it comes to our modern languages, I'm always looking at the roots of things, like the roots of English words, um, which is why I like to also study Latin languages and Gaelic languages, because a lot of English is a mix of both of those. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Thumbs up, Eric. I pretty much agree with Amir says, I pretty much agree with everything you say about lowering the age of eligibility to 18 to run for office is just whack. Nobody is stupid enough to attack us. Hmm. Um, my thinking on that is is not about that. It has to do with this. My belief is that if you can be still effectively drafted, which you can, into fighting in a war, whether it's through actual literal draft, being pressed into service by the military for one reason or another, which can happen. Um, which happened to me, frankly, even after the draft was abolished. Even when I, at the time, was not living inside the United States and I was a 6-year-old child, I was pressed into military service. Okay. So that happened. And my thinking also is that if you, or you can be economically pressed into service, for instance, if you have, say, you live in a town in the middle of nowhere and you have no job options other than what the government has decided for you, it are your job options because they ultimately control huge aspects of the economy, and you and your family are going to starve to death and be out on the street if you don't join the army to go fight in a war thousands of miles away that they've decided the country is fighting, and you have no say in the matter. I believe that is completely wrong. Um, we should not be allowing that to happen. We should be we should have a situation whereby if you can be pressed into military service, that you also should have the right to run for office and decide whether or not we are engaged in that conflict in the first place. And I think doing that will eliminate, or at least greatly reduce, the likelihood that uh, we will engage in conflict in the first place. Because if you're 18 years old or 20 years old or whatever, and you're the president of the United States, you're not going to send your friends off, your other 20-year-olds, other 18-year-olds, to fight in a war that has nothing to do with any of you. Those are your friends. You have more loyalty to them just because of the fact that they're your age group and your generation. Now, if older generations are in power, deciding that younger generations go off to fight, there's less of an interest in rich old people caring about the lives of young poor people, right? Or the children of, you know, the children of middle class people or lower class people, economically speaking. Um, so that, I believe, has been exploited too many times by our government, uh, and I think it needs to be corrected. We've had too many wars where our young people have just been killed by the thousands and thousands, fighting for something that had nothing to do with them and had nothing to do with most people in our country. So, my thinking is that if we correct that by lowering the eligibility, the age eligibility for president, that we can prevent these things from happening in the future. Um, it's just natural that would be the case. So, I mean, I would not send my friends off to fight. I would not send my kids off to fight. I would not. You know, if rich old people want America to fight in a war, then they should be going off to fight it themselves, frankly, as well. Not forcing, you know, the young adults, the children, basically, of other adults who are in an economically disadvantaged situation to go off and kill to support their wealth. That's what we've seen far too many times. And assuming I'm elected, that will be one of the first things that I will completely change forever. So it's not whack. It has nothing to do with people attacking us. It has to do with uh, abuse by our own government, abuse of power by our own government, and curtailing that as much as possible. So there you go. Amen to that, Jay Will. You would go to jail then. That's not always an option for people, you know. You, you don't understand how things work. obviously. And I hope you never do fully. I hope that we can correct things so that uh, the mistakes of the past are never really fully understood by future generations. And you guys just look back at it and go, well, that was crazy. Let's not do that. And things will be working properly for you. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And I hope it I hope it works. Hi there, Lucas. Okay, thanks. I'll post the link on the comment section of your videos when I go YouTube live. Yeah, please do. And I will definitely, I'm usually checking my phone or something for notifications. So, or you can send me an email via my website and I'll get that usually pretty quickly. Let's see. I'm drafted for selective service, but let's say someone like Trump forced me into a war, I would refuse regardless of the consequences. Yeah. And, you know, what would you do for a job, for instance? Say if you got thrown out of the military with a dishonorable discharge for refusing orders. And, you know, I mean, if you economically, you're screwed basically if you do something like that. You're going to have to really seriously, you know, narrow down your options after that because you're if that's something like that happens, that can really impact the future of your life at this point with the current laws that we have, the current the way things are currently. It's not that simple. Hi there, Lucas. You have a question. What's the future Native American population in the future United States? Um, I don't know, honestly. I really don't. I don't know. I do know that my wife and two children are part Native American from several tribes, and I do know that I am probably partially Native American, despite being mostly European. But I think I have a slight Algonquian part in my heritage, Northeast U.S. Um, Amir, you're someone who's described as a right populist. I would prefer just to say a real Republican, actually, which doesn't exist as far as I can tell these days. Few and far between. Probably about 3% of so called Republicans are actually Republicans anymore. Uh, guess what? I'm in that 3%. So, like, I get it. And it takes people like me to actually really get stuff done, not just pretend that we're getting stuff done or talk about it. Uh, Based on what you say, you sound like a populist. Well, a populist is someone who is just in favor of seeing government that works for the people, right? Is that what you mean by populist? I think it's a very vague term. Okay. So if that's what you mean, then that's what I am. I'm a I am a populist. I believe in we the people first. I thought that was a given when it came to how our government should work. We the people. Remember those first three words in our founding documents? I didn't know until later on in my life that people don't care about that so much anymore. Well, I still do, and I always will. So, yeah, I guess I am a populist if you want to use a label. But yeah, so yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, Lucas, my wife is partially, let's see, from my wife is partially from let's see, the Caddo tribe, which is the indigenous people of what's now Texas. The the word Texas actually is a Caddo word, Tejas, which is it means like hi. It's sort of like aloha, but it also means like friends. Hello, friends. Hello, friend. Um, Also part Lenape and I believe Seminole. I I grew up in the very northeast in the cold snow, and a lot of my roots actually go back to that to the Massachusetts area, Boston especially. And I believe that because of that, I probably have some Algonquian heritage somewhere, maybe some Ojibwe, and also um, the same from heritage I have that was traced to Virginia, the early Virginia settlers. So, so yeah, I'm a little bit probably of all of that. I think most Americans who can trace their heritage to those parts of the United States are indeed of that heritage. My family were on the Mayflower, you guys, and in Plymouth and Boston in 1620. So we go way back. That's on record. This might sound like a strange question. Can you cook Native American cuisine? I can't really cook to save my life, but my wife can. She makes a lot of, yeah, what might be thought of as Native American or thought of as maybe thought of as Mexican dishes, but they're not really. They're Native American. Do you think getting rid of daylight savings time is a good idea? No, I don't, because I grew up on the East Coast. So, and those of you who don't know why East Coast people appreciate daylight savings time, uh, President Obama did an interview on the Jimmy Kimmel show talking about that, and he explained it very well. You should look that up. I think he explained it thoroughly. So, um, no, I would not like to get rid of daylight savings time because, you know, even though I don't spend all of my time on the East Coast anymore, having grown up pretty much entirely, for the most part, on the East Coast, um, I sympathize greatly. So, yeah, I think making America the greatest again will involve keeping daylight savings time. Sometimes you just got to keep things that are already great in order to make things the greatest. Does that make sense? I'm gonna have to go changing everything. We just gotta fix a bunch of things that went wrong along the way that we've forgotten about and need to really get back to you guys. And of course, explore new things and emphasize good new things. It's very simple, but it's a huge task that we all have to be part of if it's really going to happen. And I hope that we can make it happen. Lucas says, I hear you. I grew up my whole life on the East Coast. I'm originally from Westchester County, New York. I need daylight savings time. Yeah, you do. Um, I grew up, as I said, mostly, not too far from you in Massachusetts, in mostly in the north of Boston region area, just south of New Hampshire, about like an hour, 45 minutes from New Hampshire, and half an hour or so, 20 minutes even on a good traffic day north of Boston. Um, yeah, the winters can be really cold, especially when you get out to the ocean, like get out near the ocean. New York is kind of nice because you guys are insulated from the ocean by that 2 hour stretch of land between Boston and New York State, but well, 2.5, 3 hours really. But it gets much worse when you get out to the ocean, like in terms of weather wise and cold wise, and it can be pretty brutal. So Amir says, yeah, it does. Are you referring again to the daylight savings time? Yeah, but you guys, I like daylight savings time, and I think we should keep it for the East Coast people who spend all of their time on the East Coast. I mean, and it's nice. It's a nice little present. So let's see, you guys can point us in the direction of making America the greatest again. What do you guys think would be helpful in doing that? A thing that I'm thinking a lot about as someone who has, worked in federal government before for construction projects, especially in particularly in the city of Boston and the surrounding area. I would like to see what happened in Boston, where it was kind of dumpy in a lot of places in the 70s and 80s. And if you get out to some parts of the surrounding areas of Boston, it still needs a lot of work as far as development. But overall, Boston is a really nice city now. It's it was taken from being an old city that got neglected during World War II, and some of it became very dumpy and dilapidated. But now it's all that's been sort of either demolished, renovated, or or replaced with ultra new modern infrastructure and building and development. I would like to see that happen in cities like Philadelphia, for instance. if you've ever been to Philadelphia. There's some amazing architecture in that city, but it just needs to be fixed up and cleaned up, and it's an important historic location, not just in American history, but indeed world history. Um, we could really transform Philadelphia, Baltimore, Detroit, even Washington D.C. needs you know a, an infrastructural upgrade in many ways. I think where it's worth doing, and assuming that things like global warming aren't going to affect sea level, uh, we really should consider doing that. Having a sort of Marshall Plan for America instead of focusing on uh, fixing up the rest of the world and neglecting our own cities. I think we should look at formulating a plan to renovate places like Detroit. I'd like to call it the Detroit plan because I think Detroit is the biggest example of where things have gone horribly wrong in terms of infrastructure and development. And in honor of what I think would be fairly easy to accomplish there if there were just the political will to do so. Uh, we can really make Detroit the example of what can be done if we just put our minds to it, and what can be done to all of our important, especially historic cities and towns. So, what do you guys think of that idea? A Detroit plan, I want to call it. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm looking back at Amir said, I also live on the East Coast and I live in the place with the most random weather. What's that, Florida? What do you think has the most random weather in the East Coast? Because I think New England has the most random weather, but that's just because where I mostly grew up. But I think we should definitely focus on helping out rural towns and investing in Main Street, not Wall Street. I've been saying that as well. I want to see more investment in small businesses, less in Wall Street, less in banks, less in all kinds of areas where we don't really need to be rescuing these things, but we really could be helping out our people more. Uh, so that's why another part of the ideas that I've been putting out is prioritizing Main Street over Wall Street, and I think that will help rural towns and cities, smaller cities, rural towns, for sure. Every town's got a Main Street, pretty much. So let's look at that, what we can do on Main Street all over the country as well. Hi, Jay. I'm not going to change my slogan. I appreciate the input though, but I haven't just sort of randomly come up with this. I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I think "Make America the Greatest Again" is really a natural progression from where Trump is going to leave off in uh, in 2024. So I think I would just like to see greater work done on what he's been doing in a lot of instances, and a continuance of a lot of things. So I think I'm going to keep it, but I appreciate the advice for sure. I agree with Lucas as well, Amir. And yeah, I have heard Ronald Reagan saying "Make America Great Again" somewhere. So, but I want to make it the greatest, and I think a lot of us do as well. So let's go for that. I'm not going to use returning America to greatness because um, I think America's already great. Frankly, I think it has been great. I think on a lot of levels. I mean, it's not. There's a lot that we can improve on. Let's be honest. But and there's a lot of things that aren't great. But let's go from just not looking at. Let's try to look at it differently. I think that would be the approach would be the most, or will be the most effective. Uh, while we understand the reality and accept that things are the way they are, we don't want to live in denial, right? We want to be honest with ourselves and each other and the world. You know, things are relatively good if we look at it in a bigger picture sense. Um, some things are not that great. Some things aren't great. But in a lot of things, they're not the greatest. Not like it used to be. Um, other countries have surpassed us in a lot of things. And as someone with a lot of friends around the world, I can attest to that. As someone who travels quite a lot, actually, um, I can attest to that. You know, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in Europe, for instance. I spent a lot of time in Canada. I have friends all over Asia. I have friends in Australia. I have friends in South America. Um, yeah, Africa. This is a small world. I know people on every continent, and you know, a lot of it has to do with our generosity. We have helped other countries to the point of where they have surpassed us, but we aren't helping ourselves as much as we should be first. So all I'm just saying is, can we prioritize ourselves first? Can we get our own house fully in order and working the way it should before spreading ourselves too thin, basically? Because, you know, when we need help, the only people we can really rely on are ourselves, right? I mean, the world relies on America, but when America needs help, we can't rely on anybody else. So it's unfortunately the reality that we live in. Um, we can complain about it all we want, but it's not probably going to change anything. I think thinking that we're going to change the entire world that way by complaining about it or whatever is, you know, while I agree with that it should be different, and Donald Trump has expressed that extensively. While I agree completely that it should be different, uh, the reality of it is that it isn't, and we can only depend on ourselves ultimately. So that's another part of what I'm trying to communicate here is that we need to focus on ourselves and making our situation better by ourselves for ourselves. Um, and that's it. And nobody's going to do that except us, for us. You know, I mean, people like to receive our help, but they don't necessarily want to give it back. And that's understandable. I mean, I'm not really okay with that, but that's how they're probably going to be because that's the nature of the world. So we have to understand that we are different. Our culture is different, and we're our country was born of a different spirit, really, than probably any other. So I just think we need to start putting ourselves first as well, a little bit more so than we have been. Let's see. Jay Parker says, I live right outside of Detroit and have had jobs there. Would love to see the city, a better city. Yeah, me too. I mean, Detroit is such a, to me, I look at it as an amazing historic location with, a really rich cultural history, for instance, especially. Like Detroit is the center of the epicenter, really, of so much of modern. People don't really realize that about Detroit, but you know, because of the culture, the different groups that coexisted in Detroit, more or less, before um, and during the civil rights movement, you had amazing music that came out of Detroit, for instance, that went on to influence the entire world, whether we realize it or not, and change the way people view each other forever. That's how much of an impact Detroit has had on the planet that we live on. Um, it was the first city really to, well, one of the first cities to sort of break down segregated culture and gave birth to punk rock and a lot of the anti-war movement came out of Detroit. A lot of the civil rights movement came out of Detroit. Um, Ted Nugent is from Detroit. I mean, the MC5. If you guys don't know the band Death, you should check them out. They were incredible. Now, you may not have heard of these people or these groups or any of the history that went on there, but I guarantee you, anybody who did was profoundly inspired by it and went out and did something to change the world afterwards. And I just think it's a shame that a city with such a rich cultural history is in basically a shambles. So I definitely think that there's potential to fix Detroit up. I think it wouldn't even take more than a year, frankly, if we did it the right way. We could bring everybody with a skill to Detroit for a few weeks at a time. And then you can go back home and wherever you live, wherever you're from. Make it a collective effort because, Detroit is our city. It's all of our city. Uh, and we all have a stake in it. The same with Baltimore. Same with places like Gary, Indiana. I mean, you guys, Michael Jackson is from Gary, Indiana. So one of the most influential, probably the most influential music artists of all time. Um, had such a profound impact on the culture of the entire world and the way people think. And the town that he's from is just, it's falling to pieces. How can we allow this? I don't think it's right. And I can see how we could fix up these places very easily, very inexpensively, very quickly. And all we need is some people in the federal government who actually have the will to do that and the will to make it happen. Well, guess what? Here I am. So if you guys want to put me in the position to make it happen, I will make it happen without a doubt. You live in the Northeast, and that's you don't have to tell us where you live. I understand if you want to remain private. That's totally fine. I'm not going to ask you anyway. Actually, everybody has their own personal style. That is for sure. Let's see. Lucas says, "I'm curious to ask, what do you think of a basic income of $1,000 a month? Sounds good, since me and my mom are poor." Here's what I think about that subject. I'm absolutely in favor of some sort of basic income for people, provided, now this is provided that we have programs in place that are generating income and that we aren't running the country into the ground financially just to pay for basic incomes. I'm totally for that. If we have the money and we can continue, we can look at also the federal government as a business, which it is really, but we need to create more programs that generate revenue for the government, not just taxing people and raising taxes. Um, we need to be more thoughtful about how we can actually create more income. And yeah, we could then have extra money that we could then use to take care of people who need it. I'm totally fine with that personally. I don't think that's, some people say, oh, that's socialist or communist. Well, it really isn't, because if we're if our government is a corporation, and as citizens of it, we're all effectively employees of it, then we deserve to get paid. So we just be really employees of of the corporation that is our government. Those of us who need it and qualify for it. So yeah, I'm totally fine with that, provided we are using our business minds to continue making the income that is needed to take care of people that way. We can't just operate on a deficit. That's not really how things work in reality, but we don't want the country going bankrupt either to pay for things. Um, all these things have to be balanced for sure. But I do think that we could, for sure, be doing a whole lot more to generate revenue on a federal level so that we can take care of people that way. And I want to see that happen. Hi there, the code breaker. Do I know someone named Cynthia Sue Larson? Hmm. Not off the top of my head, but it's possible I have met somebody by that name. Does sort of ring a bell, actually. Why do you ask? I'd like to know. Richard Elvis Man Empowered says, I live in United Kingdom, England. What if we had a new universal basic income? Um, as far as I know, the UK has that to some degree. I mean, you guys have a better system in a lot of ways than America does when it comes to taking care of people. I mean, you can get all kinds of benefits that Americans just don't have access to. Same with a lot of European countries because, you know, you guys don't have to pay for your own defense. We're paying for it for you and other things that we're paying for. Now, I wish no ill will towards the UK or any European country. My family are European, but I think that we really shouldn't be paying for these things around the world when our own people are in need. I hope you guys understand that. I hope you guys understand that we have no ill will towards you, but it's insensible and it's unsustainable and really kind of immoral to not take care of our own people and take care of other countries instead before taking care of our own people and our own cities and towns. So something needs to change there. And I do have ideas. A lot of people have ideas. Uh, if Donald Trump doesn't start to implement them, then I certainly will, assuming I'm elected in 2024. But Trump is doing a lot with that. I give him credit where it's due. Uh, he's he's recalibrating the way things work, um, and you know, thank you, frankly. The Codebreaker says in her book Quantum Jumps, she talks about how someone healed a fractured bone using mental time travel. Well, that's really interesting. I would like to know more about that. I'll definitely look up that book at some point. Uh, I do realize that the power of the mind is much greater than most people realize because I have these abilities Richard says, that's fair. Yeah, that's good. I hope you are elected in 2024, Michael. Good luck. I respect the American people. Well, thank you. And, you know, we, the American people, respect the United Kingdom and the British people and the Northern Irish people. Um, and, we wish nothing but good things for you guys. And, you guys know that if you're ever in trouble, we're here for you. But sometimes we need to take care of ourselves as well. You know, it's just the reality of it. And sometimes we do have a tendency in America to overextend ourselves, helping others, and neglect ourselves. I hope the world understands that. I don't think that that's really understood. Um, and we know that it may be difficult for and other countries are not necessarily in a position to be able to help out the United States when we need help. But so don't think that we're not wanting to help you guys or that we don't care. But sometimes we do have to sort of focus on ourselves, as everybody does. That's the way relationships are, and uh, Superman is not real. He's a fictional character. It's it's just it's just the way it is. And yeah, we just we want to make a better world, but sometimes we got to start with ourselves. That's just the way it is. But I think give us some time to get our own affairs in order properly, and we will be in the future able to continue to or start helping other people again. That's really, you know, the situation that we face right now. But yeah, so I am also actually, I don't know if I mentioned it to you, Richard, but my family are from London, some of them, and some of my family are from Dublin. So I am both British and Irish, English specifically, and I have some Welsh and Scottish ancestry as well, but mostly English and Irish, and some other. Yeah, as you can see, probably when you're in that part of Europe, when I'm in that part of the world, people always come up to me and ask me for directions. Yeah, people always ask me for directions when I'm in like England or Ireland. It's like, sorry, I don't know. I know how to get. I, I know my way around London a bit, and I know my way around Dublin a bit. Um, but I couldn't tell you the names of streets or anything like that. It's just like it's just not in there. Chippenham. Do you say Chippenham? Did I get that right? Chippenham. Yeah, I have family from London. I have family in, let's see, all over the place, really. Yeah, uh, in Yorkshire, Yorkshire. I can do the accent. I'm not very good at it, but yeah, yeah. I, I think I'm better at a London accent or like Dublin accent. Let me try the London one right now. Um, Hello, Gov. How are you? All right. I'm going down the pub, right? Naff off. I'm going down the pub. And I'm trying the yeah, I'm trying the Dublin accent. But, all right there, bud. What's the story? I like the different accents of Britain and Ireland. They're so varied for such a small place. Um, for such small places, and it just really isn't that way in North America. It's very consistent throughout, especially these days. I mean, I grew up in this a little bit in the South in Florida, and it just sounds like Yankees. A lot of Floridians or Florida people just sound like they're from New York or New Jersey or something. It's pretty funny. Um, yeah, which indeed their families probably are. In fact, I know that's true. But you have a Southern accent, like a Southern English accent, or a Southern. Yeah, in America, when we say Southern accent, we mean "How y'all doing? Y'all come back now. I'm going out to shoot me up some food." That's kind of Southern. Richard says, I've never been to America, but I would like to visit New York one day. Well, you know, your passport's good. We welcome you. You guys are, um, because of the agreements that Britain and the United States have, British people are effectively treated like Americans by law, yeah, in the United States. The only thing is you can't vote, but I mean, you have probably more rights inside the United States than any other uh, non-U.S. passport holder. So yeah, and New York is cool. I mean, I spent a lot of time living in the New York City area, and I grew up in Boston, which is just a few hours north of New York. So I've been to New York a lot in my life. Um, in fact, my family still has a house just outside of New York City, in the greater New York City area. But it's nice. It's very, a lot of New York is still very reminiscent of, and indeed still has the same infrastructure as it did when it was British. So New York is still a very British city in many ways, as is Boston. Um, it's a good place to travel to if you're British to learn more about British history. Really, you can kind of see what how it started off and what came. after it was no longer British, but it's still the culture's still there. A lot of it. New York is a very well mannered. There's etiquette all over the place. Very civilized place. New Yorkers are some of the greatest people I've ever met, actually. They put us Bostonians to shame. But, we know how to fight. So that's our excuse. Lucas says, I have a question. Is neoliberalism done finally around the world? God, I hope so. I really hope so. I like pizza rolls. Says, I like Trump, but I'm still scared about him being president. I live in Kentucky, by the way. Tell me what you think about us. What do I think about Kentucky? In what sense? I mean, I have friends from that area. In fact, some of my family were from Kentucky and Tennessee a long time ago. Um, they moved west to Texas and California. But I like Kentucky people. My wife is from Pennsylvania, which is right next to Kentucky. So we kind of call it Pencil-tucky, actually. My daughter's from Pennsylvania as well. Uh, we kind of refer to it as one big region, which is Pencil-tucky. Have you heard of Pencil-tucky before? It's a nice place. Let's see. Richard says, my dad's been to New York. He liked the tall towers. He's been up on the Empire State Building. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I've done that myself. And I was in the World Trade Centers before they got blown up. In fact, my dad helped rebuild the World Trade Centers when, after the first time that someone tried to bomb them, back in like '93, was it? I think. And they, when that was, someone put a van in the garage in the basement or something, and with explosives in it, and it blew out the whole side of the building. And I saw that after it had happened, and that was, yeah, that was something else. And I went up in the building after that. It seemed kind of scary. Like it was definitely compromised after that first attack in '93. Um, but yeah, the Codebreaker says, Michael, do you believe in predictive programming is real? Yes, I do. I believe that predictive programming is indeed just probably disclosure. And I do believe that the power of certain organizations is quite extensive, that there's gradual disclosure that is always ongoing about certain things, and it might appear to be predictive programming, but it's really just disclosure that's gearing people up for certain inevitable things uh, that are already known will happen by certain other individuals. Like for instance, via technology like time travel and chronovision, which we'll learn more about. I've talked about a lot, actually, chronovision. But I think you might want to look at what groups like MJ12 are capable of doing, Majestic 12. And I'll talk more about that as well and my personal role in Majestic 12. Um, it's all it's all very interesting, and a lot of things are already known in advance. That's the honest truth. So sometimes what you might see in a show or a movie or whatever that's telling you of a forthcoming event or thing that they want you to know is coming. Um, it's just you being told of something that they know is already going to happen or may probably already happen. If that makes any sense. I like pizza rolls. Says, do you think Louisville, Kentucky will be safe if a war broke out and nuclear weapons were used? No, I don't think anywhere would be. Frankly, I think if nuclear weapons were used, it would seriously compromise and damage the planet and the human species for forever, possibly. And that's why I hope that we never use them. I would never want to use that for any reason. Those, I would never want to use those for any reason. I hope that there is nobody on this planet who would ever want to use those for any reason. And I think that, we really need to start thinking about how we can all come together and remove these things from our collective reality because all it takes is one, and we can seriously screw things up. I don't think people really truly understand the seriousness of the nuclear threat that is still ongoing. If you if one goes off, even if just a single nuclear power plant is compromised, the damage that can be done. I mean, we've seen examples of that with, 3 Mile Island, Sellafield, Chernobyl, and look at the long-term damage that's been done because of all of those. Right? It's not a joking matter, and it's not something we should be messing around with anymore. And I think the leaders of any country that has this technology, these technologies, really need to start putting their heads together and formulating a plan to rid the world of this stuff because, you know, it's just not an option. It's not something you can insulate yourself from. If, you know, nuclear radiation doesn't adhere to borders. If a if a plant explodes or is compromised, it compromises the whole planet. If a bomb goes off, it compromises the whole planet. So it's inescapable, right? Let's see. Yeah. Um, Richard says, I remember the 2001 attacks. I watched it on TV. Yeah, me too. I remember I had the day off work. I was sleeping late, and my phone rang and woke me up. Uh, it was a friend of mine telling me to turn on the TV. So I turned it on and I saw the World Trade Centers in a puff of smoke and some stuff coming out of the side. And then, yep. And then a few years later, I actually moved to the New York City area. I moved to the New York City area after 9/11, and before 9/11, it was a very different city. It was much happier, much more fun. It was a very different type of environment. And after it just became more serious, more uptight, more people became more defensive, more distrustful and protective, which is understandable. The trauma of that must have been horrendous to actually see going on in your city. So, I like Pizza Roll says, like, you're talking about The Simpsons, you have predictive programming. Guys, Matt Matt Groening from the writer of The Simpsons, I think either is a time traveler, has access to information from a time traveler, or uh, has like chronovision, access to chronovision, or someone who, or access to someone who has access to chronovision. Does that make any sense? So, when President Lisa happens, and President, I think Bart is also Bart becomes president at some point. Yeah, I think that there's something to that, and President Schwarzenegger. So don't have a cow, man. Radiation is the deadliest. Yes, I am true. I am telling you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Pizza rolls. That's what I do, and I hope you're okay with that. I hope other people are okay with that. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to tell the truth. Radiation is the deadliest. It is the worst thing that we could possibly allow into our environment. So we need to really get our heads together and start thinking about how we can eliminate that. Richard says, I think the world needs to change and become more peaceful and embrace the future for the good we can bring collectively. I 100% agree. And that is going to take more and more cooperation as time passes, and less obstinacy. We're obstinate. We're just an obstinate species. We're less inclined towards change and development and growth than we should be, than we have the luxury of being, frankly. And I think that is going to necessitate quicker change than people might be able to handle, but that's okay. They'll get used to it. So because we don't have the luxury of doing things the way that we've been doing them with a lot of things anymore. Nostalgia is a thing of the past, as they say. So, Richard says, I had a dream last year and the dream came true and I saw it happen in the future. Does that have some power? maybe you have some sort of psychic abilities. And I don't mean like psychic as in hokey, hocus pocus, crystal ball stuff. I mean, maybe your brain just works in a way that is more clued in or keyed in or tuned in to how it's supposed to work, how all of our brains are supposed to work than other people do at present. I think the brain is a very powerful thing. Yes, I do. And we, as a species, have mental abilities that most of us just aren't really in tune with yet. I've been in tune with stuff like that my whole life, but there have been points where I wasn't paying attention to it and it didn't work. And I'm still trying to understand it all fully, frankly. But yeah, it's definitely, you definitely have some, could be onto something there for sure. Yeah. Pizza Roll says what we need to do is make peace with each other countries and focus on space technology to find more things out there in the universe. I agree. We should be focusing on, you know, not dividing and conquering each other. We should be focusing on uniting and um, working together on things that are beneficial to all people. So, especially, yes, space technology, space exploration. I think that will definitely bring us closer together for sure. And that's something that I would like to explore for sure. A multinational, international space program that would bring people from all over the world together to work on planetary goals. How about that, huh? You predicted your grandpa's death. Well, I'm sorry to hear your grandpa died. Uh, a lot of people say that when someone's about to die, you kind of know sometimes. I don't know what that's based in, but I don't know. Sometimes when it's time to go, it's time to go, and you just kind of know when that's going to happen for someone else sometimes. But see, saw something 2029 happen, and I had this dream. Often now and then it comes and goes, but it was an event about a big change happening in the USA in 2029, huh? That makes sense because if I become president in 2024, I will not run for a second term until much later. And in 2028 and 2029, I do expect that if I'm able to get in and change some of the laws for the next administration, that some major changes will happen when they come along. Some very major changes. And I think, that's what America's looking forward to on the whole. We really want major changes. And I think it's just going to take guys like Donald Trump and me to really get in there and, you know, fix the machine, so to speak, so that these changes can actually occur. Uh, because a lot of times we have laws in the way that stop change from occurring. We have inadequate legislation on certain things, and you know, we're a law-abiding society for the most part, but sometimes when laws prevent progress, we can be hesitant to pursue that progress. So the natural thing then is to change the laws on certain things, or to adjust the laws, or to create proper laws so that things can occur in a peaceful way. Pizza Roll says, I'm 13 and I know I can't vote, but if I could, I'm definitely voting for you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. You're 13. You should not be in my live chat. This is for adults. So I hope you got your parents' permission or your guardian's permission. Richard says, I see myself living in the USA around that time too. Well, wow. How about that? Can you see if we win the World Cup? Will America ever win the Soccer World Cup? That would be nice to know. We're hosting it in a few, was it 2026, I think? So it would be cool if we could host it and win it. Maybe we can arrange that somehow. Codebreaker says, do I see myself becoming a future vice president? Let me see. I did at one point think that if Donald Trump was going to replace Mike Pence, that I would be a good replacement for him. Uh, say if he chose a new vice president in 2020, that I think I would be a good replacement for Mike Pence, and I would be more useful to the country than Mr. Pence has been. Uh, I suppose there's time for that to happen still, but I think Trump has already selected Pence, but he can always change his mind. Mr. Trump, change your mind. It's okay. Mike doesn't want the job anyway, can't you tell? He just wants to go home to Indiana and, you know, do some basket weaving or something. Can't you tell? He doesn't want to be in Washington. Besides, you know, I've got along with your kids. We're like the same age, so it's cool. Let's see. Richard says, my son William gave me a hug while seeing the news for this big celebration happened. Hmm. Yeah. Well, what many of us hope will happen in 2029 and uh, and the 2028 election and the presidential inauguration of 2029 is that young people, younger Americans have will be given by law, by me signing into legislation, more power and rights in our government. We've been talking about that earlier in this live stream, but I want to see younger people be allowed legally to become president, even. When we have an age restriction on who can be president, and that age is 35. Um, that was written into law back in 1789. I think it's a very different world we live in now, and our young people deserve more rights, frankly. And I want to give them those rights. I would like to see, someone younger. I think that would be great for our country. That would be great for the morale of our young people, and it would be a great gesture towards people under the age of 35 who have been, shut out effectively of the decision making, the decision making aspect of so many things that affect them in ways that up to and including, their them being alive, which is ridiculous, you know. So yeah, I would like to see the age for presidency lowered significantly, 20, 21, something like that. Richard said his son's going to go to a good school in the USA. Well, that's great. There are many fine schools in the United States. Look at the Northeast United States, especially. We have some of the best schools in the world. Even I went to school in Massachusetts mostly, and Massachusetts has some of the actually the best schools in America. It's been consistently rated as having the best public schools and universities in the entire United States. So I assume logically, therefore, that uh, that also means Massachusetts has uh, some of the finest schools in the world as well. And of course, you're familiar with universities like Harvard, MIT, um, Boston College, Boston University, Northeastern University, Berkeley School of Music, other smaller colleges, universities. Those are all in Boston. So it's a very academic town, city, always has been. And that's where I grew up. So I'm very fortunate that way. I received a lot more education than a lot of people. So very grateful for that, frankly. And I'm very grateful to be able to use that to help others. I think it's a tremendous privilege actually to be able to help other people that way, in my view. Richard says younger people will have more rights in the future. Yes, that is probably going to be true, and that it will change to as low age 21, I believe. I hope so. That's what we're shooting for. And it'll just be a slight amendment to our Constitution, a very slight one. Just two words. It says 35. We're going to change it to, yeah, maybe 21. Just cross out 35, put in 21. It's that simple. We might have to do it, we'll have to do it by amendment, I suppose, and it'll have to be ratified. But I think the Congress will be more than willing to make that happen because we want to empower young people as well and protect them from. For me, it's a matter of really protecting them from potential abuse of power that other people have over them because of their lack of ability to participate. That's the real issue, and I've seen that in my lifetime happen. Uh, Extensive abuse of power, frankly, and not by the Trump administration, strangely, because he's the one being impeached for it, or has been tried for impeachment because of that. But previous administrations, I think, engaged in more abuse of power that way towards our young people, including myself. I mean, when I was younger. And I don't wish to perpetuate that because that happened to me, or I don't think anyone of my age or generation wants to perpetuate that upon younger generations or uh, and our children, who are our children at this point. I mean, people my age have 20-year-old kids at this point, 25-year-old kids. Um, I started late. My children are 10 and younger, but I do know people my age with adult children. So Pizza Roll says, "Do you think that kids will be able to choose if they want to go to school or not?" That's a good question. I do think that in the future, education will change and it will become more technologically based, and there won't be necessarily a need for classrooms and physical schools, but we'll probably still have them anyway, just because you know, people do enjoy the experience of sitting in a classroom and learning with their friends. And maybe we can have different options for sure. I would like to see more options for education, especially. And I think if we all want to see more options, that's what's naturally going to occur. So I don't think I'm much different than the rest of you guys. So I hope that children of the future will be good adults. I think they will be, Richard. I think that I mean my children are children still, and you know I've gotten to know them well over their childhoods and so far, and they're really good people. Like they're much better people than my generation. Uh, they're much more kind and caring, and they're not as they're not damaged by things as we might have been. So they're looking at things with a totally blank slate and an approach that is indicative of them wanting to create a better situation rather than perpetuating negative things. So it's good. They're good kids. And they're, you know, my children are pretty uh, typical of their generation, of their age bracket, I think. Richard says, I believe artificial intelligence will be more involved in the educational system. I agree. I think we will have just automated learning and automated informational access, and who knows what technology will come along that will we'll be able to use. We just, and there are people who have talked about downloading information into your brain rather than having to spend all the time learning it, just putting it in there through technological means. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody, I don't see the problem with us doing developing things like that. Um, Pizza Roll says we will be good adults, but one thing is technology will take over so much that most people focus on that, but that isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing. But yes, we will be good adults. Yeah, I think the younger people of today are definitely probably some of them. They're probably the one of the better generations that have come along in recent history. Um, my prayer is that we, their parents, don't mess them up and don't mess things up for them as previous generations have done for us and for them even. I mean, let's be honest. And I don't want to like sound like I'm picking on anybody um, or sound like an ungrateful brat or anything like that. But frankly, the baby boomer generation has screwed things up for their children in many ways and their grandchildren in many ways. Um, and either A, they don't care, or B, they don't realize it. Both are bad. There's a lack of uh, responsibility to their duty of care collectively, and a responsibility towards their duty of getting all the facts before making decisions and how those decisions impact other people, like their children and their grandchildren. So I do think the baby boomers are a bit more selfish and narcissistic than uh, generations after them and before them. And that's caused a lot of problems. I'm not gonna lie. I experience those problems on a daily basis, frankly, and have encountered them probably my whole life. So, because my parents are baby boomers, um, their friends are baby boomers. My friends' parents are baby boomers. So, my wife's parents, um, they've caused us a lot of problems by their bad decision making and irresponsibility. So, that's another reason. I don't want to go picking on them, but I think that's another reason why it's time for them to kind of step aside a little bit when it comes to uh, the decision making aspect of society and make room for younger people to have a say and to have some input, like myself, who is not even a Gen Xer. I'm basically an older millennial. I'm like an XY, really, like kind of in the middle, but many people have different opinions as to uh, what generations are what. But I kind of think of myself, I identify more as more of a Y generation person, but I'm definitely in the X camp as well. So I'm kind of like a YX, maybe would be a more appropriate label for me if you want to do that. Um, I don't really like labels, so that's kind of a Gen X thing, I think. Millennials don't like labels either, as far as I can tell. We're not interested in categorizing every little thing. They, we, whatever I am, whatever they are. Um, but yeah, the baby boomers screwed up a bunch of stuff that we are negatively impacted by, like the fact that you know they thought it was okay to just borrow endless sums of money and declare bankruptcy to get out of paying it, to get out of paying it back. Um, like Donald Trump, for instance, is renowned for, frankly. No, we can't even do that. Thanks a lot, guys. I'm not picking on Donald Trump. A lot of people in that generation did the same exact thing. And, back in the old days, the great generation, their parents, the World War II generation, they didn't do that. If they wanted something, they worked for it, they saved for it, and they went out and paid cash for it. They didn't borrow to buy something and then screw things up for everybody else by abusing the bankruptcy laws and other things. They only did that when it was genuine. They didn't abuse things that way um, because they knew it would negatively impact other people. They weren't just thinking about themselves all the time. Well, the boomers, I'm finding out, a lot of them have done that. And, thanks a lot, guys. Real nice of you. So maybe you guys can step aside and let us try to fix things at least for everybody, because I think we've got some good ideas, and your ideas clearly didn't work, and they're not helping anybody, even you, at this point. So, how about it? All right. What else have you guys been saying here? Internet glasses or smart contact lenses and possible chips being implemented. Good ideas. We've been hearing those ideas tossed around the internet for some time now, and I definitely think it is. There's great potential there with those ideas. So anybody who wants to look at good investment ideas, maybe if you start seeing companies that come around that are talking about smart glasses and these kinds of things, let me know, first of all, because I would love to be able to invest in those kinds of companies. And I would also love to be able to start up those kinds of companies, but I don't have the time to do everything that I would like to do, but I'm certainly supportive of these ideas and would definitely be a potential investor, at least on a personal level. And if I become president, certainly supportive of these types of things because they're going to grow our economy. And that will enable us even further to help people with things like basic income and ending homelessness and what else have we talked about? Ending homelessness, ending food poverty, ending hunger. We want to get rid of all these things. These aren't, you know, These are good ideas and smart ideas, investment ideas. These are capitalist ideas. They're investments. So now let's see. The younger generation are becoming intelligent and can use elders about and can us elders about technology as they are born into the modern age. That is true. The younger generations are much more skilled with computers and phones and tablets and all this kind of stuff. Um, some of us older ones are fortunate enough to have kind of always had those things around, but we're few and far between. I grew up in a very technologically advanced part of America where we had access to things like computers in the classrooms before anywhere else in America, and indeed probably the world. But so I can very early on remember not having these things as much, but from you're talking like fifth, sixth grade onward, I kind of always had computers and technology around, personal computers and personal technology. But even before that, I was exposed to very advanced technology um, that isn't even public yet, but is coming. Um, but yeah, the kids today are very developed in their abilities and their ability to use technology, and that's great. That's only a good thing, right? Hmm. But yeah, it's interesting with all the information that I find my children have access to. I feel like I'm talking to adults sometimes when I sit and talk with my children. It's like they know so much because they have all the information. Um, so they are much more educated than previous generations as well, which is great. So hopefully that will translate into wisdom, which I think it will. I definitely think it will. Yeah, they teach us about new tech. Generally, yeah. Uh, some of us have, though, have had exposure to very advanced technology that we're hoping to make public, but we can't just yet. Like myself, I've been exposed to highly advanced technologies, um, so advanced that uh, I had to have my memory wiped afterwards. But I teach my granny how to use a computer back in 2010. That's really good. Now she can look up information and not have to buy the newspaper every day, and she doesn't have to have her information limited to the TV or the radio or uh, any of those forms of media. She can look up as many newspapers as she wants all at once, other media sources. This website, YouTube, has an abundance of good information. Um, and there are really great media outlets that don't even have newspapers anymore. They don't have TV stations. Um, so that's another great thing about the internet. I like Pizza Roll says, "What do you think would have happened if Bernie became president?" Excuse me. If Bernie had become president, then yeah, I don't know. I really have no idea. I think if Bernie became president, then um, Trump wouldn't be the president. And I don't know. It's hard to imagine. Why don't we think about that? Because it seems like Bernie's going to get nominated again this time. Seems like it to me that Bernie will be the next Democratic nominee in 2020. So it seems like he's running. So do you want? I think you're going to have the choice of Trump or Bernie in 2020. So let's see. Richard says, I was born in December 93, age 26. Well, welcome to 21st century, where there's not much difference between you and I, my friend. I am 45 and you are 26. There's 20, almost 20 years between us, but because of the healthcare and technological advancements that we are developing and discovering, uh, you and I are more or less in the same age category at this point. I mean, you and I could live to be in our hundreds, and it would be relatively insignificant, the age difference. Isn't that interesting to think about? We're just kids. 45 is still a kid in 2020. So, so yeah, I kind of do think of myself as a big kid, really. It's really strange. You know, I'm a 45-year-old man, but I'm almost like a young kid in some ways. And like I get along with people who are much younger than me as like peers. It's a bit strange, but that's just I think a symptom of the times that we're living in because the generational differences are closing in on each other. So welcome to the weird 2020s, you know. I like pizza roll says, do you think the U.S. is the most developed country in the world? In some ways, and in other ways not. It really depends on what you mean by that, frankly. Um, but what I would like to see is the the utmost that can be done in terms of development in every aspect applied inside the United States before America starts focusing excessively on the rest of the world, which is what we're doing. We're neglecting ourselves and spreading ourselves too thin around the world, in my opinion. Um, so that's a key point of my campaign here is to make America the greatest again. So Pizza Roll says we're using Chromebook in every class now, and we didn't use Chromebooks last year. We also watch news every day in the morning and see in class to see what's going on in the world. Well, that's cool. It's good that you're wanting to that they're wanting you to be aware of what's going on rather than just focus on learning a what I was taught in school, which is a probably somewhat, if not largely, inaccurate view of history instead of current events. I was taught a lot of history, and I don't believe that all of it was accurate after having done a lot of extracurricular historic study and research. I think that we relied quite a bit about certain things and propagandized. And just, my advice to you would be to try to filter out what's fact and what's propaganda. And you can't go wrong then. And be objective with what information you're taking in because um, that can be a challenge, but you can do it. Just be objective and don't let your emotions sway your opinions too much on things. I'm not saying don't have emotions, it's good to have them. I have emotions and feelings, but when it comes to discerning truth, which is what we should all be basing our decisions on, uh, you know, you don't want to be led by your emotions. So people will always use your emotions against you. They know, you have emotions if you're a good person. And unfortunately, that can be manipulated by bad people with bad intentions. So this is where we need to be careful. And as someone who cares and is a is endeavoring to be a responsible towards others sort of person, um, if you don't know that, then you should know that and should be aware of that. And you know, use your use your brain first when it comes to figuring out what's really going on, and you can't go wrong. Eric says, I mean, we can't just keep America great. Well, yeah, we can't. And I think it's always going to be a work in progress to some extent, frankly. I think everything will always be a work in progress. But, you know, we got some catching up to do in some ways. That's all I'm saying. We need some us time, some we time to catch up and make ourselves the greatest that we possibly can be. Hook says they work hard to stop Bernie, but he has military support. I'm sure he does. He is a New Englander, so being also a New Englander, I well understand the nature of what that's about. Um, Pizza Roll says, "What age do you think I'll reach?" I don't have any idea what age you will reach. I don't. Uh, I don't know. You said you were 13 earlier. You could live to be 150, for all I know. The way things are going, that's definitely possible. There's a guy has who I've talked with who uh, says he's a time traveler from the year 2076 named Michael Phillips, and he says in the future he knows me, and that last time he saw me in the future I was 101, and that's not out of the ordinary in uh, 2075, 2076. So you could live to be 150 probably very easily, I think, if you have enough money and other things to help take care of yourself. Yeah, propaganda, Columbus. Yep. I think it is important that we, uh, as Americans, do really endeavor to understand the accurate history of our continent and as well study European history, especially because that is indeed what most of us are. Let's be honest, we're Europeans who live in the Americas, in North America. As U.S. citizens, we live in North America, but um, it's like we don't understand necessarily as much about where our country comes from, like what it's built upon, as we could and as we should, and our own roots. And we should study African history too, as a large percentage of our population are African ancestry, have African ancestry. Um, it's important, I think, to understand the history of countries like Russia and China, particularly because their history impacts uh, their present, and their present impacts the entire world, including us. So it's history is so important to understand, especially when it comes to the balance of power in the present that we see, that needs to be properly maintained and turned into more of a collaborative venture, I think, than just balancing things out and not trying to step on each other's toes. We need to engage for collaboration, and understanding is a big part of that, and appreciating what different peoples have gone through, and and of course understanding ourselves better, which I would encourage any white American to just get your passport and go travel to Europe or something for just even a week. See where your family came from, because you know that they didn't come from North America. They uh, came to North America from somewhere else. See what Europe is like. There's still a lot of history for you to that can help you understand where you really actually come from. Um, or Russia as well. A lot of uh, Americans have Russian ancestry too, especially out west where it used to be Russia. Richardson, let's see. Richard says, I saw Britain's oldest man on the news a few years ago. He was 110. Yeah. I read a story recently about a man, I think it was from India, who traveled to Britain, and he was like 100, I believe 160 or something. And the British authorities thought his passport was fake because he was so old. It's kind of funny. But in the future, that may be a commonplace thing. I think I personally have the ability to, even now, like without any further technological or medicinal or healthcare developments, make it to 100 easily, because I have pretty good genes. Some of my ancestors were like my grandfather lived to be close to 100. My great grandmother was around there. Some of my family lived to be very old. So that's somewhat genetic as well, I think, but taking care of yourself goes a long way as well. Not smoking, not drinking too much, not taking drugs, eating properly, getting the right exercise, diet, rest, um, taking the right medicines when you're sick, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Richard says, I wish to live over 100 as well in the future and make the 22nd century. I would love to uh, live to see the 22nd century. That would be amazing. I would like to travel forward in time and stay in like the year 10,000. That would be something else. That's what I want to do. And remember, in 2028, you'll see that time travel is real if I become president, or hopefully when I become president. Let's see. Nestor says, "Are you still going to be president in 4 years and 2068?" Um, I hope so. Michael Phillips has suggested that he said that the timeline was changed when he went back to 2076, and that I was not president at that point in time when he traveled back, but he came back, I believe, to help change things so that I will be. Uh, I'm working on it. I'm still here. I'm still campaigning. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens. And I'm planning to campaign pretty hard from now until 2024. So here we go. See, Richard says, I believe he will president as the future is set, following the nature of reality in which it is designed to be. I've thought about that too. Maybe certain things are predestined and foreordained. But then on the other hand, maybe those things can change as well. Free will, I think, has a lot to do with many things. And I think in my instance, and I have to be very honest here, is that I'm going to need your guys' help, frankly, if I'm going to become president, because I can't obviously do all that by myself. No, nobody's going to. I mean, anybody who's ever been elected to president, the office of president, did it with a lot of help. And for me, I'm gonna have to be reminded to keep asking for help. Um, I'm I'm here already saying that I need help. I need your help. Um, I need help to help you, basically. And I believe I'm the right kind of person that you can help to help you. Does that make sense? Um, and what else? Kind of losing my train of thought here a bit. Hold on, let me drink some water. Where was I? Yeah, I believe that I'm the right kind of person that will be able to help you. And so, therefore, I'm going to need help to continue, basically. I'm going to need support, encouragement, um, advice, all kinds of things. I think if anybody is saying that they don't need help to pursue something like the office of president, it's they're either really out of touch or they're lying. So surely you can understand that it's a very discouraging thought to it's a very just I mean for me already it has been huge moments of discouragement where I considered that this was insane and I shouldn't be doing this, and I should be doing something else. I could be doing something better with my time, something that will definitely be more sensible and yield more immediate benefit to myself and my family. But then when I step back and look at the bigger picture, it's like I'm still convinced that this is what I should be doing, despite any obstacles that might come my way, and that this is what I'm meant to do. And yeah, so that's why I'm doing it still. And I think a big part of it is also making sure that certain other people stay out of the office because they will likely do something horrible with it if they get the opportunity to. Um, that includes pretty much everybody else thus far who has publicly expressed any interest in being president in 2024. If you research any and all of the candidates that have put themselves forward for consideration or discussed publicly the idea of it, me personally, none of them are the type of person that I would trust with the office to do anything or to be totally responsible with it. And I believe that most of them, excuse me, all of them, would definitely do some very bad and irresponsible things with the office that would negatively impact our long term futures. This is another reason why I've put myself forward as a candidate, is because I know I'm not that type of person. Um, so here we go. The code breaker says 10,000. Yeah, 10,000 seems like a good year. I'm sure we figured a lot of stuff out by then. So that's where I want to live eventually. Um, what else can Jimmy says? What else can you do to fix the issue? Uh, the issue of the timeline change. What I'm thinking is that since Michael Phillips is not actually in control of where he travels, is that he was probably shown an alternate timeline and world where I was not elected, and how horrible that would be in order to emphasize the point and to encourage him to help me. And he's done that. He's definitely given me some sort of confidence. It instilled in me some confidence of my ability to even do this. And I believe that in the future, that's going to continue to grow. My confidence has already been growing lately, and faith in my own abilities. But I am the type of person that suffers from occasionally a very low level of self confidence um, due to the nature of my upbringing, and I'm working on that. I'm not going to say I'm a perfect human being because I'm not. I've got things to work on, personal things, things that I need to change. And I'm a work in progress, just like any human being. But I'm learning to see myself more objectively, which I've had difficulty doing in my life. Great difficulty, even at various points. But starting to see now that it is something that I really can do. Let's see, the code breaker says if you had to pick, who do you think should be the president after you? Um, well, if I were picking, which I don't know that I am, I don't think, uh, I would like to see a whole bunch of people be president after me. I would like to see Yolanda Renee King. I would like to see Andy Basiago. I would like to see Arnold Schwarzenegger. I would like to see Ann Coulter, Alex Jones, my son, Alexander Michael Macintosh, my daughter, Emmeline Grace Macintosh, uh, and then myself again, and then uh, Jane Oliver Beck, and then perhaps someone else I'm really close with. That's who I would like to see be our future presidents up until like 2088 or so. I think that would ensure a more stable, sane, safe world for humanity. Let's see. Richard says, I realize that some of the projects I'm working on in the near future help what happens in 2028, which has some influence in legislation in one of the laws, so it can be regulated in the correct way. That's interesting. I would like to know more about what you're talking about specifically. Um, Sounds interesting. Jimmy says, do not give up. I will not give up, Jimmy. I have not given up yet, and I do not intend to give up, despite whatever discouragement or negative comes my way. Um, I am not giving up. I've committed to that. Okay, so rest assured that I will not give up. Richard says, I believe my faith in Christianity has given me motivation in what I do. I also write poems in my spare time. I am the same. I do believe in the Bible. I've been a Christian minister for the last 20 years, actually. Um, I think that's part of the reason why I've been immensely discouraged about the idea of running for president because, um, you know, I believe in Christianity and I'm a evangelical Christian. Like part of my belief in the Bible is that we should go out and share that with others and help others to learn. And a huge problem I experience with doing that is that I often receive a lot of hostility towards my personal belief and a lot of discouragement as far as finding people who want to learn about it um, and who aren't just outrightly hostile towards it. Uh, in America, not as much, but I've done ministry work like in other countries, and it leads me to see how just different America is to the rest of the world. The UK is very similar to America in that regard, in that it's more kind of friendly towards Christianity, like evangelical Christianity. Um, but when you start going to other places, it's just not as much, and to me, that's very discouraging. Uh, and I know a lot of people in other parts of the world. I get discouraged on their behalf because I want to help spread the truth into the whole world. Um, but that isn't happening right now. And it seems like a huge struggle. It's a massive struggle, actually. And, you know, I need all the help I can get because part of the reason that I'm running for president is to help make truth known. And it seems like truth has a lot of enemies. And those who tell the truth naturally acquire enemies. And I am a truth teller, like it or not. So, Codebreaker says, considering you had time travel, it's kind of unfair how you know which candidates are running. Um, that is something that Andy Bashaga has talked about extensively, that there is a crisis inherent in our Constitution because of access to time travel and quantum access. Um, but, I do believe that ultimately what the people want is what takes place. So that is ultimately what our electoral process is about. It's about representative democracy that does the will of the people. So I think you will see that ultimately that is what's going to occur, eh, as well as, yes, maybe some people having that unfair advantage. But things happen in harmony with each other, interestingly. Okay, so I'm going to look at a few more comments and I'm going to probably have to get out of here and get some food because I'm getting a little low on my low energy because I'm hungry. But let's see. Let me read a few more things here. Codebreaker says, honestly, all I want is a guy who listens to the people. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at your words here and I'm reading them and responding to them. Um, and I listen to people. I know what you guys are. I know what kind of, like, I am one of you. You know what I mean? I know what you guys want because I want the same things. You know, I'm not, there is no, like, it's just us here. We're on the same boat. So, the NTTO law that I believe will be important regulation in the correct direction for proper safe use. Um, I don't know what that means, Richard. I'm sorry. If you could explain, I would like to know what you mean. But Codebreaker says it's easy to influence people younger than you, uh, and that he who owns the youth owns the future. You're a 45-year-old dude. I think using someone like YRK would ruin our image. Russia specifically. GT, the fake climate change activist, is also a tool. She went to a remedial school. She honestly should just stay in school. Okay. Um, can you please not quote Adolf Hitler in my live chat? First of all, I, I like to think that we've grown beyond giving any credit, giving any credence to anything that man ever said. Frankly, because you know, nothing he said or represented was coming from a good place. Um, he was a hateful, bitter, um, jealous, angry, messed up human being. He was a like you know, and he did some horrible things. So he used violence to try to enforce his way and authoritarianism. I mean, I don't think he really deserves any credit for anything. Um, his art wasn't even that good. I mean, he may have had a point here and there, but I think that whatever those were, it just is what he did is takes away from it completely. Anyway, I think Yolanda Renee King is her own person, and I'm not planning to use her for anything. Uh, I think that she will see eventually that she could be a very inspiring figure, especially to our young people, and will step up to the to the plate to motivate people in a positive direction. So Yolanda's her own person, and she has free will too. So we respect that. Everybody should respect that, and using her is not something that I'm going to be doing. That's for sure. Um, Greta, you're talking about GT, is a lot of people think she's kind of told what to say by her parents and that kind of thing. Well, I don't know enough about that to know to have any comment. I don't know where she went to school. I think everybody should stay in school, frankly, to some degree. We're not. You know. Okay, let's see. There's just a few more comments here, and I'm gonna pack it in for the evening. Um, hey there, Blue Moxie. How are you? Check out Rebel Media. She had plastic bottles. Oh no, plastic bottles. That makes her such a hypocrite, right? Seriously. Climate activists. Trump is not going to get a third term. Our Constitution prohibits that, and and so will I by becoming president if need be. So sorry, Trump. I don't have any problem with you, but I have a problem with 3 terms. I think it's 2 terms for a very, very important reason, and 3 is too much. Even if you're a good president, it's still too much. It's too many terms. So, um, let's see what else do we got here. What else are you guys saying? It's okay. We all make mistakes, Codebreaker. Hitler was probably abused as a child, and he definitely did a lot of drugs. Yeah, he was messed up for sure. And, you know, it's really just sad what kind of person he was, but he definitely did not have to manifest uh, things in the way that he did. That was definitely, you know, the NTTO law. Could you tell me what that is? NTTO. What does that stand for? Time Travel Organization? Hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely have to have legislation governing time travel if it's to become a real public or even military utility because these things need guidelines. I mean, you can't just let anybody have access to it for any reason whatsoever. It has to be conducted in a manner that's respectful of the reality of its usage. And that's definitely understandable as somebody who has been part of using it, has used it. Um, that's something I've been emphasizing actually. What was my reaction to seeing your first ET? Sort of no reaction, really. I'm not a very reactionary kind of person. I'm, I'm naturally kind of a quiet, studious, observant kind of person. I think Michael Phillips mentioned that about me, actually. So that indicates to me that he actually knows who I am and you know, did meet me. When I was a child, I was very kind of quiet and just taking it all in. Very studious, very observant, very curious about everything. And that's the kind of child I was. And it's interesting, Michael Phillips said that about me, even though I don't remember really meeting him when I was 5 or 6 or something. But he said that I was like that. So it's interesting. But yeah, I was more just like, hmm, this is interesting. Just kind of taking it all in. I don't not very quick to react to things. I think it's important to process things and understand things before reacting, if you're going to react at all. Um, so, yep, National Time Travel Organization. Okay, NTTO. Is Richard a time traveler? I don't know. Ask him. Richard, are you a time traveler? Okay, Richard says he went to 2052. Was on a mission when he was younger, and I was with Annie Bishago on the journey. Okay, it's 2052. Is I have a question for you then. Is that when my son becomes president? Or can you answer that question? Don't give me some answer to throw me off. If you can't answer it honestly, then just tell me. Um, I believe my son will become president in that year. Okay, cool. That's reassuring. I'm glad you're being honest with me. I know that it's difficult. I know that like you can't necessarily tell all the information that you might have access to, but it doesn't matter when you think about it in the bigger picture. If certain things are going to happen, then they're going to happen. And He was almost killed. Who? Andy or my son? We're seeing Andy Bashaga was almost killed, or my son was almost killed. Really? Can you tell me anything about that? Because I would like to make sure that he's safe. Or will that change things? I don't know. My son's name is Alexander Michael Macintosh. And he's a good kid. So, how was my son almost killed in 2052? That's interesting. Uh, who was president before him? I believe that the president before him will be. The, hmm. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Well, I appreciate that information, and please note that uh, not just you will be making use of that. You won't be acting alone in your awareness of things. All right. Who was president before him? I believe that the president before my son will be Alex Jones from Infowars.com. Who was your favorite place you visited? Yep, Alex Jones. President Alex Jones in 2048 for 4 years, preceded by President Ann Coulter for 4 years. One syllable last names. Sounds terrible. Like Trump. Well, good thing I got three then, right? Macintosh. You guys are gonna get sick of that name eventually, I promise you. Did you guys know the computer was named after me? Did I tell you that? The Macintosh computer? It was named after me. Truth. It's evidence. It's a clue. There are clues all throughout the timeline of the fact of time travel, but you just have to look for them. It's kind of like the Beatles albums and the Paul is Dead phenomenon. You kind of have to know that there's something to look for before actually looking for it. I can see that. He's a smart young man. Even now, he's highly intelligent and very caring and considerate of others. And he's 7 years old, but he's more of a man than a lot of grown-ups right now. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, I'll look out for him too. Don't worry. So thank you for the information. I really do appreciate it. Not just you know, I mean, not just for mission reasons, but because it's my son we're talking about here. So, um, hmm. All right. Well, thank you for all that information. If you could please uh, get in direct contact with me, I don't really want to talk further about what we're talking about in the live chat here because it pertains to very specific details that could be uh, used in a manner that endangers people, particularly talking about my son, which is, to me a very serious matter as a parent. Um, I would appreciate it if you get in touch with me uh, via maybe Skype or something. I can send you a link, or you can add me on. Well, I don't trust Facebook, but let's see. I'll send you my link in the chat here, and maybe if you're on there, if you can join, then we can have a conversation about that because I would like to get as much information as possible about that in particular because for obvious reasons. I hope it's obvious. Um, trying to find my Skype link here. I'll find it. Just give me a moment. All right, here we go. All right. All right. Come on. This thing is slow, right? Yeah, I'm kind of tired. Okay. The Skype link. That's my Skype profile, you guys. If any of you have anything you would like to communicate with me directly via instant message privately, that is a good way to do it. I'm gonna hit the hay after a little bit of food. I like to eat before I go to sleep for some reason. I need something to digest while I'm sleeping, I guess. But this is Michael Macintosh. It's been a pleasure chatting with each and every one of you. I enjoy these live chats very much, actually, and I do promise to get a better camera very soon. Uh, this isn't the best look, but it's all I've got for right now. I have other cameras, but they don't work with this YouTube thing. But I'm going to get one that actually does work with it. So be patient, please, and the quality of these things will improve significantly in the coming uh, week or so. I think as long as I can um, get out and get to a store somewhere and get the right camera. So I'm gonna fit that into my schedule, I hope. So thanks again for coming in. Thank you for all of your questions and your input and information. And this is Michael Macintosh wishing you all a very excellent weekend coming up. And stay safe, be good to each other, don't drink and drive. Thanks.